off, I want to talk about like our plan in general, right? So before we even like get into practicing, before we talk about review, we need an idea of like what we're doing here. So this is kind of the chart that I've come up with that has really helped me streamline what I want to do in my practice and really focus on what is my goal, what are the metrics that I'm measuring myself. So, right, like measurable, how am I making progress? Review, the most important part, and then creating a game plan. So that is the process that I will, yes, are these daily goals or overall goals? That's a good question. So when I say, and I'll go into each one of these separately, but when I say goals at the very top of this chart, I'm referring to your goal in general. So what is your score goal? You don't have to get there automatically because in all likelihood it will take a while, or you'll work up for that. But just having like, is your goal to be 155 and above, 160 and above, 165 and above, because there'll be different metrics or different levels that you'll have to reach depending on what your goal is. So yes, things to consider. What is your goal? Another point of having a method like this is to make sure that you're keeping yourself accountable and making sure that you're able to track progress. Just in case you need that motivation, or you see that despite putting in a lot of hours, like you may not see a huge score increase right away, but know that that's working towards something and you're learning and gaining the skills that you need to make you successful. So yes, this is just a very general outline of what we will be going through during class today. Any other questions before I move on? Does this make sense? Cool. Thanks, Ariel. Okay. So as we mentioned, the first step, we want to define our goals. And just a fun statistical fact, you are 42% more likely to achieve your goals if you write them down. So yeah, I want everybody actually to take a minute and just like write down a goal. And that's okay if it changes, but just like take a minute and like write it down. Yeah, typing can count. I'm like an old-fashioned person, so like I have my little notebook, but typing counts. I'll take it. Thanks for sharing, Marcos. Yeah, that's great. That's a great goal. Another thing that you can do is pick someone, message someone your goal if you're comfortable with that, and make an accountability buddy. So not only does it help if we write down our goals, but if we have someone that's keeping accountable, that's another thing that will significantly increase your ability to stay accountable to your goals. So if you're comfortable with that, pick a person. It could be someone you don't know either, and send your goal. Okay. So the second thing is, after you've decided what your goal is, then we need to choose the metrics that will hold you accountable. So these also can be very personal. For example, I personally track the hours that I spent studying. This is like the Excel sheet, very simple, doesn't have to be anything fancy, but this is what I use. You can track the number of LSAT questions that you attempt in a week, the number of full practice tests you completed if you're at that point. You can count the number of course videos or book pages you read, the amount of drills, just something to keep you accountable. So that could be part of your goals for the week. So I want to reach 100, I want to attempt 100 LSAT practice or questions of some sort, or 50 LSAT questions this week. I want to study 10 hours this week. Things that you can measure that will make sure that you're at least you're keeping yourself accountable. Does anyone have any other ideas of ways? I do. Yeah, you can tell I'm type A from this, from all my Excel sheets. But does anyone else have any other metrics that I missed that they use to keep themselves accountable?
Casey, do you include like programs that like keep like that you can use as timers, for example, like the Focus app I think that Steve talked about? Like do you would you incorporate that in that, or do you think no, we should do something different?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know, like, I sometimes use Todoist, I think it's called, like, or I might be butchering that, but it's like an app that helps you like put out tasks. I don't use any particular apps just because that's what works for me, but I think that if it helps you stay focused, then like absolutely incorporate it. But I think it is like, I know that's kind of a cop out answer, but if it works for you, I say do it, but I don't personally use any apps. I do like Headspace though, like for meditation in the morning. So um, that's one thing. Thanks for your question, Jocelyn. Okay, so any other questions about goals, metrics, things like that? I would personally, I set them at weekly goals, but if you want, you could do every few days or, every 2 weeks. It's really up to you. Thanks, Matt. Ariel uses the Forest app. What's that, Ariel?
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me okay.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see, it was probably 2 weeks ago. I think it was during Annie's like first presentation. She mentioned this app, and it's basically a way to track your time and what you're spending your time on. Granted, obviously, of course, it forces you to be on your phone a little bit. However, so the whole point of the app is that you set like a timer, say an hour or whatever, and you can attach a label to what you're doing for that hour. So for my case, I'm doing solo study for a whole hour. Um, and so during that hour, a little like tree will plant itself or it'll grow. By the end of the hour, it'll be a full grown like plant. And so it's super cute. It's not a real plant, it's just a virtual one. But if you leave the Forest app, I think this is the free version only. If you leave the app, your plant will die. And so it's kind of like incentivizing you to like not leave the app, not, distract yourself. And there'll even be like little reminders like, hey, put your phone down or, focus, remember your goals, that kind of thing. So I really like the app because it's incentivizing me to like stay focused so my plans don't die for one. And then two, well, at least with the like pro version, that's $1.99. Um, there are different like types of plants you can buy with little coins you get from successfully growing your plants. So either way, it's just a lot of incentivizing for me personally, but I do find it's a good way to sort my time. And then another good thing is that there's a feature even in the free version where you can sort or you can see how you're spending your time either per day, per week, per month, per year. Um, and so if you use the app effectively, you can see, okay, I spent 12 hours this week studying, solo studying or group studying or whatever. So I found it's been pretty helpful.
I'm absolutely going to steal that. That sounds really cool. It's like I know
Yes,
there's an app
definitely.
like that makes you drink water that I eventually deleted because I wasn't drinking water. But like I feel like that would be a good thing to bring back. So thank
Oh,
you for
thank you for
sharing that.
sharing that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so yes, so this is I'm going to spend most of the presentation talking about evaluation because for me, I think this was what was missing in my studying. I was doing drills and practice exams and like all of that good stuff, but I was getting overwhelmed by thinking about what strategies have I tried? What have I not tried? What works for me? What doesn't work for me? Like, what do I need to focus on? Um, so for me, this part was the biggest part that was missing out of my studying. So there are lots of different ways that you can keep track of your progress. It sounds like there are really cool apps out there. So if anyone wants to drop those in the chat or give any other ideas, I would love to hear them. And I'll share what I use. But yeah, when I mean evaluation, I mean, what are you doing to track your progress? What are you doing specifically to track your strengths, your weaknesses? What do you need to work on? Um, have you tried something? What was the action steps that you did? So forth and so on. So this is what I use. I called it the ultimate check-in guide. on the left, I have logic games, logical reasoning, and then reading comprehension. And then here I put my mini goals, as Ariel mentioned before. So what is my goal for this section eventually? And then it's important to focus on what you are good at. So what are my strengths? You can see here for logic games, I said something like, I'm a visual learner. So once I have a solid diagram, I can do very well in the questions. So that's good to know, because I want to utilize my strengths in when taking the LSAT. Then I write down my weaknesses. So what do I need to improve on? Sometimes I don't know where to start diagramming. Okay, so then let's think, what can I do to change this? So for that example, I said, maybe I can look at the orientation questions before starting to diagram if I don't know where to start. So that's my plan of attack. I have that written down. Then the next time that I'm doing drills, I can try to do that. So started doing this for full practice exams. Sometimes it's just as simple as implemented this strategy while I was practicing, like I wrote here. So you want to make sure you're keeping yourself accountable. What did you actually do? And then, of course, review. So how did it go? I said, this strategy is definitely helpful. It isn't always necessary, but especially in the games that don't have orientation questions, obviously. But I think this strategy in particular is helpful for grouping matching games. And of course, this is just a document for me. So I talk like I'm talking to myself. So it doesn't have to be formal or anything like that. And then action. So what are you going to do based off this strategy? And then I said implement, specifically for grouping games. So that's great. I started with a weakness, I found a solution, and now I'm going to implement it. And then you can move on and you can start to list the strategies that work for you. If this is something that you think would be a good implementation for you. And then the other thing about this diagram is that at the bottom, I just like to track what I did before and how my approach has started to be different. So you can see, for example, I used to read the stimulus and then the question stem, and now I read the question stem and the stimulus. There's no right or wrong answer for this, by the way, as Ben was talking about last night. It's truly up to preference, but that's just what works for me. Does anyone have any questions or anything or comments on what they do, particularly in an evaluation context?
Would you kind of change the spreadsheet based on your daily interactions with games, or LRs is kind of a weekly or monthly thing?
Yeah, I review this before I take a full practice exam, definitely. So that's normally twice a week. I do my full practice exams on Wednesdays and Sundays typically. So I'll review it before there, see if there's anything that I want to try out for this game. Or this section, and then anytime during class, if there's a strategy that I want to circle or try, then I'll come back to this chart, write it down just so I don't forget. And that's the main benefit that I feel like a spreadsheet like this is just keeping yourself accountable, because I found that I was learning so much and I was like, wait, what did I want to try? I kind of forget, or even if it's in my notebook, trying to go throughout the notebook and things just to rehash this. The goal is really to make sure that you're keeping yourself accountable and have a system of keeping track of your progress and keeping track of your strengths and weaknesses. So the next is practice. And of course, I had to throw some LSAT memes into my presentation. So practice, practice, practice. This is kind of self-explanatory. I'm sure you're all doing this. You're doing it in these classes, you're reading books, and these are the type of things that you can keep track of for your metrics. And if you don't have a good study plan, I'll do a plug for Steve's study plans. They're great. That's what I've been using. And they just give you a day-by-day kind of guide of what you should be looking to do. So if anyone has any comments on that, or drills that they find helpful, please feel free to share. Okay, So we kind of talked about this a little bit before at the very beginning of class, but as many of us are aware of, and many of you know, review is one of the most important parts of your LSAT studying. So having a consistent and detailed review process can help you stay accountable and help you track your progress. I guess the two themes of my presentation, accountability and progress. So there's lots of different things that people use. I personally, I love Excel sheets. So that is what I would personally use, but I know some people have wrong answer journals, so they'll just like write it in a notebook or something like that. You can type it in a Microsoft Word. I will show you guys my documents. So I have separate documents for each section. We have, so this is my, I'll show you. So what I do is I just copy like the heading up here and I just make a new tab. So it's super easy, doesn't take me any time at all. And I will go through the question number. I'll say if I got it incorrect or correct. I'll write out the argument, the conclusion, what is the stimulus saying, and then go through the correct answer, wrong answers, what went wrong, what went right, and then what will I do differently this time? And this is actually something I recently added that I hadn't done before, but I found is super helpful because now the next time I do a full section, I can just come back and specifically focus on this column in particular and just run through and say, okay, last time I didn't understand the stimulus, so I need to take more time to really understand what the stimulus is saying. So you can go through like that. And then similarly, someone asked about logic games at the beginning of class. So this is what I typically do for logic games. I'll have the game. I like, if I'm decided to go over a game, I like going through all of the questions just so that's just a preference thing, but it's a similar thing. You can see I say what was the correct answer, what was incorrect, what was tempting about it. And this is really part of the Socratic review method. So that's why I didn't want to spend too much time going over it because I know we've had many class sessions talking about this, but just wanted to give y'all another example of what you could potentially do. So it doesn't have to be fancy as long as you're like going through your thought process of what works for you. Example, something similar I do for reading comp. So you can see it's the same type of thing here. For reading comp, I love Ayaka's method. So I guess I'll highlight this. So I'll go through, I didn't finish this one, so I guess that's not a great example, but I'll go through and do the process of outlining the details of the paragraph, of each paragraph, the general purpose of each paragraph, the simple purpose, and then the main point and author's opinion. So that's what I found works for me for specifically reviewing. So for LR, you only go over the questions you got incorrect and or flagged, right? Yes. I am very liberal with my flagging, so I normally flag quite a lot of questions, just so I'm reviewing the ones that give me any difficulty. How come you don't do that for logic games? For logic games, I feel like it takes me less time to kind of go through it, and I might have to make it, like because you use old work from logic games, sometimes I'll want to go back and see like what could I have used. I feel like there's more context required to go over logic games, if that makes sense. I don't know. Does anyone else want to share how they review? Yeah, no problem. Yeah, for reading comp, I'll typically, it depends because honestly, reviewing takes me a really long time. So it might, if I'm running out of time, I might just focus specifically on the ones that I flagged, or got incorrect. But sometimes if I have the time, then I'll review it as well. So that is great. And then we'll go back to present. Does anyone else have any comments on review or what works for them or anything like that? If I'm seeing, I'm not, for some reason my chat disappeared. Okay, great. Okay, so finally, you want to make a game plan. When you do start taking full-length sections of the LSAT or doing full-length PTs, it's important to come up with a game plan. So this doesn't have to be exactly what you do for each question, but it should be a realistic guideline of how you want to spend limited time in each section. So questions to consider is, what is your plan of attack for each section? What are the strategies that you want to typically use? What is your general strategy? What's your backup? What are the pitfalls you want to avoid? So I shouldn't have gone back into this presentation because I have another example to show you guys. But I keep this in the same tab as I do the ultimate checklist guide. But for me, I just started doing this as I've been doing more full-length PTs. But you can essentially see that I have my general strategy that I lay out. Then I have my general tips and pitfalls that I want to avoid. And then I have my plan attack here. So then this is like my goals for each section. And then finally, I've also started taking my notes from the documents I showed you guys previously and just pasting the what do I want to do next part here, so I can just have a one-stop shop for review anytime that I'm going to take a new PT. Will you share the check-in guide for us to model off our own if we want to create them? Yes. Yeah, I think that's the link. Thank you, Ariel. Cool. Oh, and I completely forgot to share this other part with you. So I kind of skipped a step a little bit, but before a full practice test, I think Elena talked a little bit about this, but we spend so much time reviewing and all of this that we often don't always put the same time in setting our intentions or setting our goals. So something that I've also started doing is just taking her ideas and saying, what are my intentions for this PT? And then what do I want to work on for next time? So that is something that you also want to incorporate. And I guess just to highlight that. So just to go over the whole process, we've set our main goal, we've outlined our metrics, our evaluation, so that's our ultimate check-in guide, or that's the documents we use to keep ourselves on track. Then we practice, we review, and then you're going to go back to that evaluation method. What worked, what didn't work, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and continue that process. And then when you start going over, you start getting closer to your exam, that's when you can come up with a realistic game plan.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them, and feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.